Okay, welcome, welcome everyone. To today's session, we decided to do an introduction into what is Lucid, what is Jungle, and what are OKRs, and how do they play together. And our intention with this is to share those ideas and frameworks because we have extensive experience with those, and to enable you to use them. They're all for free. They're all concepts that are out there for free, so you can self-serve.
COVID work from home fail.
Hello, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
We already began, but we will do a little introduction round very soon. And the goal is to enable you to use these. So we hope that after our short introductions into those three frameworks, you bombard us with questions so that everybody learns quickly, so that everybody comes out here knowing how to do this. Okay. Having said that, let me share my screen with this is our agenda. So we already used the first 5 minutes, and we'd like to do a brief round of getting to know one another. This 20 minutes is here because we calculated with at least half of the 24 that registered, which is not the case, but still let's keep it as concise as possible. And basically what we would like to do is ask 2 questions. Who are you? And if possible, answer in 1-2 sentences. And what do you hope to get out of this session? Also 1 or 2 sentences. So I'll begin. My name is Thomas. I try to contribute as much as I can towards making the planet a good place for all life. And I've been doing that with more or less intensity for a very long time, at least 10 years, in some calculation I could even say 25 years. And what I hope to get out of this conversation today is to support all of you in navigating complex VUCA environments a little bit better. That's what I hope to get out. Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So I'm Sebastian, and yeah, I'm always having a lot of fun in navigating through complex environments and steer and guide transformations. Yeah, I'm doing that for almost 20 years now, and I'm doing a lot of stuff with Thomas towards making the planet a good place. And I'm here today because I'm super curious about your questions. Yeah, and also looking forward maybe to do something together in one way or the other. Thank you. So Lotte, you would like to continue?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lotte, and I'm organizational culture lead in my daily business, and it means for me it's pretty important to help people or teams to create a creative culture, to work better, to have sense of life in their work balance, if you want so. And therefore what I want to get from the session today is inspiration, and learn how you use the tools, and to compare. That is my intention for today. And I give to Gustav.
Sorry, I was changing windows. I'm Gustav, and I work to halve the proportion of lifestyle-related disease in Sweden and Europe. Actually, I'm originally from the music industry, but I worked in health for the last years. What I hope to get out of this session is more knowledge about OKR and how to implement it, but also hear more about Jungle and LUCID, because that got me curious. And I give it to Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Yusuf. I'm Julian. So about 10 years ago, I founded a startup in Berlin in the music and entertainment industry. And after that, I switched to Team Neuster, which became an lead investor of the startup. Team Neuster is an owner-led digital agency based in, headquartered in Bremen, but all around Germany and Austria and Switzerland, and some other countries in Europe. And so I'm in the marketing department, and so all our projects are very complex and not really structured, and when I came from a product company to the service field, it was really like if you want to get your customers into trouble, you have to ask them about the targets, and that's a big saying here. And so to bring structure back to the project and to the customer's mind, I think it's a big issue. And yeah, I just heard about OKRs. Of course, I know them, but I just heard about LUCID and Jungle, but don't really know how to work with it. And I know Thomas and Sebastian from my Berlin time, and I was really curious to hear more about that stuff. Yeah, Alexander?
Hello, I'm Alexander Felsenberg. I live in Berlin. I have two hats on. One is come to that group basically based on my engagement with the World Summit Award. It's wsa-germany.org, where I'm doing looking for and finding and nominating software or solutions actually, which help to which supports the SDGs. So basically we have 8 categories that in one way or the other supports one of the 17 SDGs. We're doing this since 2003, and probably the biggest collection of digitalization or digital solutions that help to support the SDG. And right now I'm in the process of building up or creating this in collaboration with some big players as well. Well, it's not about big, but good players, let's put it that way. A topic called Green Coders, where we introduce, communicate and train developers in coding that will require or does require much less energy. We all talk about the data and the cloud, but the cloud only needs as much energy as the coders program it. And there are really big differences. You can save up to 30% of energy doing the right or appropriate coding, not the right coding. It's write it when it works, but you can come from one place to the other with that amount of energy or the other. So that's the Green Coder, and we're going to launch it by end of the month. And so you will invite it. It's going to be cool. and we know OKRA and everything, OKRs and that stuff. And actually, I'm not that much aware of the other topics. That's why I'm here. And I always love Thomas's input. So I'm a avid follower or participant, hopefully. And I will switch off because video takes energy. So I'm here listening, and I'll jump in. So I'll give on to Julia.
Hello everyone, I'm Julia, and I know Thomas and Sebastian quite well as also part of the Catapult Now group, even though I haven't been as active as I wanted to in the last couple of months. I'm very curious to see what you guys have been up to ever since we met last, also with the OKRs. I was active with Sebastian, also in some of the development. And besides that, I'm actually a professor for strategic design. I'm teaching at the Berlin School of Design and Communication in Berlin-Kreuzberg. And from scratch, I'm a designer myself, and I love to kind of drive innovation also in a sustainable way and consult and train wherever I can. And I will, switch off my camera about in an hour when I have to run my duties as a mom, picking up my kids again. So don't take it personal. I'm going to listen as much as I can. And I'll give it on to Ralf.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ralf Piepo. I've been in financial services for a little over 15 years now, and the last 6 in a sort of more impact sustainably focused areas, sort of on the crowd lending, crowdfunding side, and building up a new bank for the last 1.5 years with sort of an impact focus. Also think quite a bit about complexity and steering complexity, having taken sort of the COO, CFO role in these different companies. Ran into Sebastian a long time ago at a function and Thomas about a year ago, and thought it'd be nice to catch up, figure out and see what you guys have been up to, and maybe learn and exchange some ideas. And Musa, I'll give you the mic.
Hello everyone. My name is Musa Kone. I'm from Sierra Leone. The founder and program director for a local non-governmental organization in Sierra Leone. We support women. Passionately, I'm very much passionate about women's empowerment and girls by extension. So that is what I do in Sierra Leone, and we also look out for, we work with people in different communities. We look out for the problems, and also together we look out for the solution also. So that's what I'm doing in Sierra Leone. So I have met Sebastian and Thomas from the Motherland Wing. So we have been together now for some time. So I'm really happy to be part of this team again, to also learn more, so I can take new ideas to the community where I'm working here in Sierra Leone, and by extension in Liberia also, because I also have another programs that I'm running in Liberia. So thank you very, very much. I don't know who I can give it to.
To me.
You can give it back to us.
Give it to someone.
Great.
Thank you, Thank you, Musa. So we thank you for making the time. I'm really happy that we can present our little tool set here to such an eminent crowd. I learned that what I'm doing, or what I was doing as a hobby 15 years ago, I learned from Julia 15 years ago that was kind of like a version of design thinking. So I'm really curious to learn from Julia what I reinvented by mistake here today. Okay, so we want to set out with the framing, and in our invitation we wrote VUCA, but what does VUCA actually mean? I mean, we know the acronym, but in our perspective, VUCA happens when shared reality starts breaking down. So shared reality in the sense that we have a mutual understanding of the world, of our role in the world, of the shape of the world as we would like it to be, and have that mapped onto the world itself. So that's the second layer here, the complexity. And basically through the business models of the attention economy, where we have been subject to a focus of our attention to such a precise targeting that those platforms that we all know who we're talking about have created realities of one, right? So Facebook really knows how to target me. They for some reason about a year ago knew that we were moving onto the ship and targeted me with an oven, right? How the heck they knew that? I don't know. Maybe my mouse moving behavior is different when I move. But they discovered that. Okay, so maybe there's a lot of background noise. Is that in any way disturbing? No. Okay.
That's okay.
So what we want to achieve here is that on the one hand, we recapture the shared reality that allows us to navigate complexity better. And on the other hand, find ways of navigating complexity itself better. And this is how these three tools combine. So LUCID helps us talk about shared realities as a group so that we can actually get into action towards making something happen towards a good world or whatever other horizon we choose. And Jungle is helping us with defining or getting an intuition of what a complex what the boundaries of our complex systems are. How do we deal with our complex system? While the OKRs are helping us navigate from one of these corners to the next. And the way we see it at the moment in a VUCA world, we're global. So we're up here, the complexity is extremely high. The complexity is not only high because of the rising digital technologies, the acceleration of our technologies, but it's of course also complex because of the rise of existential threats, the exponential rise in existential threats. So between those two, we're in a hyperlinear complex acceleration of complex environments on the one hand, and on the other axis we're in a breakdown in shared reality. So we're basically in this corner, and what we want to do is we want to move over here or we want to move over here, because anything where we're lacking a shared reality inevitably leads to breakdown. And what we will do now is for LUCID, Jungle, and then OKRs, we'll run through a brief explanation of what it is and how they work, directly followed by a portion of Q&A. So I'll do 5 minutes about, or even less, what is LUCID, and then you can go into questions directly, and we will end up with a broader Ask Us Anything discussion where we could explore examples or other frameworks that you come up with.
And so we are going to have 30 minutes per each topic.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you take less, we have more for the other topics or more time for the final Ask Us Anything session. Yeah. So just to let you know.
Okay. So LUCID. You might know this guy as Winston Churchill. And in 1932, he sat down to write an essay called 50 Years Hence. And in that essay, he described very, very weird things. He described how we would grow chicken pieces on shelves in cellars run on solar energy. Okay, that's vertical. There's 4 innovations that came up in the last 20 years in one in one idea. And that article is full of these ideas and it's absolutely crazy, right? But he might be been onto something, because one framework we like to use today, and whether you use the SDGs or whether you prefer using something like the donut economy, essentially what you're describing is a way to measure your success based on a set of agreed on values and principles. But what you're not saying is, what does the world look like if you achieved these goals? And if we look at these super complex interwoven set of goals that the SDGs are, you can easily imagine that there's more than one future that could potentially arise out of the SDGs. And just one sec, sorry. And what we want to do with LUCID is to provide a way to agree as a group on a narrative, and we call that a horizon, of a shared future if all your problems are solved, the problems that are relevant to you and your group. And the way we do this is by asking a set of questions. So we have developed 7 questions that represent a 360 degree of what humans do. So how do we interact? What makes humans humans? And a very, very simple process. So all of this, specifically the process, is so simple as almost slightly embarrassing to talk about it. However, the questions are not. The questions have been developed very thoroughly and for a long time. And I'm not going to present all of the questions right here in the presentation, but we could go into them in the Q&A. The way it works, the process is, it couldn't be more straightforward and simple. Presented with the 7 questions, each participant, let's say 8 participants, like in this example, and we can go into what happens if it's 80 participants, answers the 7 questions on their own. After that, everybody's grouped into duos to do the same thing, to consolidate what they've developed on the first level. Finally, they are grouped into groups of 4. So duos join a group of 4. And then at the last step, everybody comes together to merge and consolidate the 2 narratives that come out of those groups of 4. So there, of course, are variations on how to play with this in larger groups or with uneven numbers. But so far, in our experience, we've worked with groups between 8 people and up to 50 was the maximum in one session. It has all worked beautifully. And for LUCID, that's the quick overview. You can download the questions and the general in the description of the process at this website, Lucid Factor, or we can go into Q&As right now. So that's as simple as I can describe it for LUCID as a quick flyover. Are there any questions?
So first of all, I'd like to welcome Hartmut. Welcome,
Yeah.
You just joined. So you missed the LUCID, but maybe there's a chance that you have a look. And if you have any further questions, then maybe you can contact Thomas on that topic.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone.
we recorded or we record the session, as you can see. So you can look at the first part. Maybe you want to say 1 or 2 sentences about yourself and 1 or 2 sentences about what you hope from this session, because that's what everybody else has done, and then everybody else is on the same level.
Yeah, my name is Hartmut. I'm based in Liechtenstein and work with several groups in the part of helping organizations on their journey towards self-organization. One of these groups is called Paul X. That's a community of current and former Siemens people. I also worked for this company for quite a long time, and we experiment with an integral actually set of capabilities and skills that we bring into organizations in working with different teams, leadership teams in different contexts. And that's why I found the idea and the headline of this session here interesting, because I think there might be some synergies in that field and maybe ways of working together and deepening the exchange on these topics.
Cool, thank you. So does anybody have questions about LUCID, about the process of agreeing on a horizon as a group, horizon worth building?
Could you maybe go through those 7 easy questions? Sorry to say that, but
yeah, we can do that. So
I did not get the URL. I don't know if you posted it in.
I will post it in the chat.
Perfect.
I will post it in the chat.
Okay, great.
So question number 1 is, how do we source, refine, and distribute things? That's an abstract way of saying, okay, how do we organize our economic activity, part of our economic activity? Of course, including desirable things, right? Like managing buffers and being aware of future generations. And it's formulated like this to be able to be entirely open. So you can reimagine this to be something different from what we do now. Currently, sourcing usually means mining. But what if we replace mining by growing? These are the kinds of questions you can ask yourself. And by the way, this is building on things like the theory of the adjacent possible, right? So that if you imagine you have 2 Lego blocks, and you put these 2 Lego blocks in the same configuration hundreds of times, and you get bored of that. So you call Lego and ask them, okay, I've been doing this hundreds of times. I'm tired of it. Can you produce one? They start producing that Lego block. Then that new configuration of Lego block was in the adjacent possible. Now, scale that up to the knowledge and the science and the technology we have right now. This means that the adjacent possible is unimaginably vast. And this is where you can pick. So you can start thinking about, how do we grow building materials, for example? Okay, so how do we ensure signaling capacity? Right? Currently, we use mostly money and votes for signaling things we want to do as a population. But are these the best ways to signal things? Maybe, maybe not. Let's figure it out. Let's think about it. So that's the second question. Then how do we govern society? Right? We have this instinct to defend democracy, and that is a good thing. But is the configuration of democracy that we have right now the best possible way? Or maybe there's even a better way than running a democracy, who knows, right? Now it becomes more personal. How do we manage knowledge? So how do we agree that something's knowledge? How do How do we distribute it? How do we create it? How do we relate to other people? Are these the configurations of people that we have right now? Are they meaningful? Are they relevant? Are they helpful? Do we need companies, or do we need groups of people who solve problems together and then go on to solve other things? And how would we organize those? And then how do we nurture the body? How do we actually provide the everything that the inputs that are necessary to grow a healthy body, to reinstate health, and to stay healthy? And then finally, how do we deal with things that are beyond the body, beyond the collective? How do we deal with things that we could call soul and spirit? How's that done? But that's what we see as a 360-degree overview of what humans do, condensed into slightly complex but hopefully precise questions.
Yeah. So just to share some experience with that framework from my side. So I've run through that questions several times, also with different size of groups, and you could also narrow down the area where you apply those questions. You can do that really on a global level. So how a good future, for example, looks like. But you can also do that, for example, how the food and agricultural system might look like, or it's for a company, and so you narrow things down, and make them more, let's say, concrete and accessible, for example, for an organization and the purpose of the organization. So this is one thing. It's applicable to all kinds of situations. And what is really striking is, if you go through this exercise, that everyone who's taking part in the process is answering the questions for themselves, and they're writing it down. And then you start connecting it, like in this little picture, and merging two of those stories and answering of the questions into one. And what is really interesting, what is happening then over the course of every merger, that you're really ending up with a coherent and consistent story for everyone who is involved. And by doing that, you have a very, very concrete picture of an horizon, which includes always a vision, also a mission, and values will be in those answers of the question. And everyone in the team can relate to it. Even maybe something is not, would see a little different, but you have really a joint view on the future by a whole team. And you can really scale it up to many, many people. Then obviously you need some more steps to bring it down. But by really merging it, always it gets very quickly. And it's very helpful to learn about yourself, but also about the team and what is on your team's mind, and also understanding.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any more questions here? Julia, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was wondering how much of a, or what kind of a time frame would you kind of recommend for this exercise? Obviously, it depends on the size of the group, but how much of a time, like, slot would you give to each of those exercises from your experiences?
So the best tested and my preferred case is with a group of 8 to 16 people over the course of 6 weeks, where there's a 2-hour session once per week, where the consolidation level can be discussed as an open group first, and then the new formed groups can have a first coordinating discussion. Then throughout the week, between those calls, each individual or group organizes however they see fit. So you have to factor in probably another 2 hours per week. So in total, 4 hours for 6 weeks. So that's a perfect scenario.
So 4 hours in total for over the course of 6 weeks, and then plus
4
the
hours
individual
per
session.
week for 6 weeks.
Okay, per week.
So
Okay.
it's quite intense.
Yeah.
But so are the results. And I've it is while I mean you all have experienced objections to formats in groups where they say, well, we already know what we want to do. We don't have to. We know the solution. You'll be faced with that if you want to do this with a group. But I have not experienced a group yet that regretted spending that time ever, because what you find is unique and very precise for you as a group, as a horizon. So without that, it would be impossible to derive anything like a proper vision statement or a mission.
Yeah, I totally see that you need that time. I mean, there are questions which are very interesting to look into and not obvious to answer. So that does take time. So that's for sure. Yeah.
And it hurts at times, right? Because you have to cut down to the absolute, to the deepest levels of how you also interact with the world as a human. And that's not so easy. And you need you will, as a side effect, experience enormous trust building in the group. So you could add that as a benefit. After that process, people really know each other.
And actually, it's also working if you have people that are not going into too deep, in the questions, because they might then add their point of view in the next iterations. And it's always when when you start, people feel uncomfortable and they have a hard time really writing the answers. There are others that feel more comfortable with that kind of thinking, but you all in the end merge them together. So it's not a problem at all if someone is not taking part in the first iteration, or just writing a couple of answers to it, but in the end it will merge. And they will contribute. And this is also really nice that nobody is lost. And in the end, it's really something everyone can sign.
Okay.
You said just now that you've done this a couple of times in a couple of different settings, and obviously the scope would make a massive difference if it's sort of a large group or small group or a company or a certain problem. But I guess one weakness that one could maybe see in a method like this is that as you go through the iterative levels, you start to head to something sort of generic and I guess framing negatively blasé. You probably have some experience with sort of similar settings and using the same methodology. Is that something that happened, or can you speak maybe to your experience on how these things happened?
So funnily, that concern is raised often, but so far it hasn't happened that it is that the result is generic. It's a good question, and I don't have a good answer to why that is the case. My assumption is that if these questions give you room to explore really deeply, and if you go deep, you will arrive more at first principles than at generic symptom changers as answers. And so while they might seem, the results might seem sometimes even obvious, they tend to focus on the first principles.
And maybe to add to that, yeah, so it also might turn out that your final horizon, it's more like an abstract painting. Yeah, so some things are not super concrete, because if you're talking about a future in, let's say, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years from now, yeah, then it's clear that we don't know. Yeah, but by trying to describe and finding a joint view on this horizon, yeah, we get a common understanding. Even things are kind of abstract, like an abstract painting, yeah, but it offers us the capability to do then a backcasting, yeah, asking ourselves, okay, so what is the first concrete step towards that horizon? And therefore, we need to have a common understanding of, okay, this is some kind of a future we can all agree on, yeah. And this is the future, for example, of B2B banking, yeah. And we now have a common understanding, and you have the common understanding not because you, as the C-levels of a company, told it to the people, but the people are, so at least to a certain amount, they are involved into that, yeah. And by being part of this journey, yeah, you agree on that, because it's not just falling from some kind of strategy process, yeah. And then it's hard to understand, but it's a really kind of a abstract, concrete picture there where you can relate to, and then you can start deriving what you need to do today, yeah, which is really strong.
As I look at the time, I would like to move on. Maybe in the end, we still have time for more questions, but we still want to quickly run through Jungle and then the OKRs. Is that okay with you? If you have more questions in depth afterwards, I'm happy to hop on a separate call and answer any of these. So Jungle. Jungle, in a way, is a sister of LUCID. While you have on the one side the horizon of that informs you about the direction of where to go, if you look at the nature of the OODA loop or the cybernetic feedback loop, you need to somehow navigate the complex system towards that. And so you need to build some sort of an intuition for the complex system you're dealing with, because we know that complex systems, and especially when we're part of them, are not really plannable in any way. And nothing describes that better than Nora Bateson, or the warm data notion of Nora Bateson. Where she states, in case you don't know it, that there is a layer of relevant system information that is derived from the context between the cold data points or the nodes of a system, and that's this warm data that is that emerges out of processes. Nora Bateson has something she calls the warm data lab to do that, which is a process in itself. And Jungle does something similar. And the way it does that is that it guides you through a process of identifying different parts of your system that are the most relevant parts for you as a group. And again, we're talking about the group scope, right? So it's when the group decides that these are the relevant parts for that group, that's part of building the intuition for the system itself already. Now, as a second element, then the value of each of these components of the system are being evaluated and normalized. So absolutely crazy, right? How could you talk about the happiness of a customer, for example, or the well-being of a forest, and quantify that and normalize it, right? It is impossible, right? It's next to impossible. But the process that Jungle guides you through builds on known and learned and successful processes of being able to get a handle on complex systems, like where we're inheriting a lot of terminology and process from Agile, for example. So that we arrive at evaluation for each of those nodes. And then what you can do, as you have gone through a process of defining your system, evaluating your system, you can now do that again and again over time, right, with known tools. This is a typical result. And what you then do is, with each experiment or time frame, you reevaluate what your system looks like. And what that gives you as a group is an intuition over time of how your system behaves based on certain interventions. And this is not an exact science. This is why I started with Nora Bateson's warm data. This is exactly what it's supposed to be. It gives you an intuition as a group about, should we do this or should we do that? And then it can give you a sense whether you're right, increasing the accuracy of your intuition as a group. And Jungle is the process that guides you through all of this, so that you can arrive at a precise way to describe your system as a group. And that's it. That's Jungle. Analogous to Lucid, you can find Jungle here. I'm gonna yeah. And just as a quick opener, as I saw it right now, Julia, you asked a question about the term lucid. It's derived from lucid dreaming. Okay, so any questions about Jungle? What would you like to know, if any? You can also spare your questions for later, and then and we dive into the OKRs and we go into more Jungle once we're at the end. Seems like that's the way to go. Cool. Sebastian, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about OKRs. And when you have now heard about the topic of how to create a horizon, or you derive a vision, a mission, and values from your horizon, and you start thinking about how to handle complexity, yeah, then it's all the question, okay, how to operationalize all of that now? Yeah, because strategy is not the operations, yeah, or it's not, it's the guidance and the guiding principle for operating that, yeah, but OKRs should be the core of doing the right things, yeah, and you can see that from two directions, yeah. You see Napoleon here, and in some kind of derived different version of that picture, yeah. Normally he has just the one hand pointing exactly towards the objective, yeah, so what to do, yeah. But as you also maybe have the experience in some kind of organization, it's rather unclear, yeah. So where you're going to as an organization, yeah, and what is the objective, and when we have arrived, objective, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that can be a leadership problem. Yeah, but it could also be a problem that your teams, yeah, have not a clear understanding of where they need to head to. Yeah, so if you have more like a loosely coupled management style, so you're not micromanaging all and everything, yeah, then you want that your people are able to make decisions on their own that are coherent and consistent with your overarching objectives and also your overarching horizon. Yeah, because as you can imagine, every employee you have is like a power vector. Yeah, and as you maybe remember from physics, if you have power vectors going in different directions, yeah, then they equal them in extreme out. Yeah, and you have one employee dragging into that direction and the other one pulling into the other. Yeah, and if they pull all with the same strength, then there is a zero in the middle. Yeah, so, and what you want, if you want to go to one overarching objective of your organization, yeah, you want to have as many employees, yeah, point towards the same overarching objective. Yeah, and to talk in the metaphor of mountains, yeah, it's good to know if you want to which mountain you want to go. Yeah, because if that is not clear, yeah, and everyone has a different goal in mind, then you're dragging not towards one mountain, but you're dragging towards many mountains. Yeah, so, or your employees do that, and then you're never going to get there. Yeah, and probably you have already experienced that in one way or the other, working for an organization where it's not clear, yeah, what is the mission, the vision, the strategy of a company. Yeah, and if that is not clear, yeah, then it's really hard to get there at all. So next slide, Thomas. So, and then you have set the goal, yeah, and you have to set a goal, yeah, because if you haven't set the goal, then yeah, okay, I'm going up at the mountain, but if you go the other way around, then everything what you're going to do is to pointing towards another summit, yeah, and then it's really hard to get there. Next one, please, Thomas. And then you have to also to make clear, so what you're going to do there. Are you going to have a party there? Or next one, are you going to have, you're going to be skiing, or you're taking the kids with you? And so these are all different stories, yeah, about what you're going to do there. Yeah, and you need to answer that. And if it's not answered, and you can answer that with Lucid and also with Jungle, and make it transparent throughout the whole organization. And if you have done that, then you can start working with OKRs. Yeah, because if you haven't defined that yet, then the OKRs are meaningless. Yeah, because nobody really can define the OKRs in a proper way. Yeah, because you're pointing towards somewhere. Yeah, but not a common goal. So next one. So what actually are those OKRs? Yeah, and I don't know how deep every one of you are in the OKRs, but I'd like to give you this overview, and then probably you have questions after my little introduction, and then we can dive as deep as you like into the topic. So I always define the objective as press the button, Thomas, as what we will achieve. Yeah, and this should always be meaningful, concrete, action-oriented, and ideally describing an inspirational outcome. Yeah, and the outcome is really important. Yeah, and you see a lot of OKRs written, but they are efforts and not outcomes. Yeah, so what do I mean with that? An effort is something where you create an output. Yeah, so for example, create a presentation or a marketing campaign, and you create 10 YouTube videos to attract a certain target group. Yeah, And this is an output. You have created 10 videos. Yeah. So, but what does that do? Yeah. You need to measure the outcome. Yeah. Of that videos. That means a certain target group is converging, yeah, towards your objective. Yeah. And therefore you have to define the right objective. Yeah. Never ever try to work with objectives that are just efforts. Yeah. And we see that in practice a lot. And the bigger the organization, yeah, the more efforts you see in your OKRs. Yeah. And then when you start transforming from defining outputs and efforts as an objective towards outcomes, yeah, this is very, very tough, because you really have to think a lot about what is a real objective that matters. Yeah. And it's not only important for the organization, but it's also really important for each individual working within your organization. Yeah. Because you want to have individuals, yeah, that for sure commit a certain outcome with an impact towards achieving the higher objectives of the company within the strategy, within the mission vision. Yeah? And this is the one thing. So power vectors pointing towards the same goals. So you have coherent actions throughout the organization, but there's a different level. And this level is on self-effectiveness. Yeah, because you want to have people working for your organization, yeah, that are self-effective. Yeah, because self-effective people tend to be intrinsically motivated, because they're happy with what they do and they are proud on what they are able to contribute to the achievement of the organization. Yeah. And when you now compare it to the management by objective, where you cascade down larger objectives into smaller, and you cascade it down and you just give everyone their objective, and it's getting smaller and smaller, and you have not an influence at all on those objectives. Yeah, you're not going to be happy. Yeah. And not intrinsically motivated. That's why you put some, you get 30% more of your salary, yeah, if you achieve your management by objective. Yeah. And this is extrinsically motivation, and we know this is not working. Yeah. And the more important is really to give the people the chance to formulate their very own objectives, and they be part of that to become self-effective. Yeah, and only if you're formulating outcomes, you can be self-effective. That's very, very crucial. So, the door is ringing. I'm back in 1 second, yeah? So give me a second. So, excuse me. So, and now let's have a concrete example, yeah? And can you go next slide? So the example is, and I stay in the metaphor of going on the top of a mountain, yeah? And if you have a very high mountain, you're not just getting there and you run up, right? If you go on Mount Everest, you have to plan things. And one thing which is a first milestone could be we set up a base camp. Next one, Thomas. Yeah, and we set up a base camp, yeah, that could already be an objective, yeah. But I always recommend not only have the what, but add the why, yeah, to lay the foundation for our summit success, yeah, so that everyone knows we are not just doing that for the sake of doing it, yeah, but there's a real reason behind that, why we do it and why it is important. Yeah, that's why it's always good to formulate the what as short and concise as possible, and then add the why. That helps always in understanding of an objective. So next one. And then what is a key result? And the key result is, so to say, you can say the from the yin and yang, yeah. So it's the missing part. Without the key result, the objective is nothing. And why is that? Yeah, because the key result is the measuring of how you are going to achieve the objective. Yeah, and the how is always quantifiable. Yeah, and it's a very clear and understandable impact for everyone within a team working towards the formulated objective. Yeah, that's really important. It's quantifiable. Yeah, it shouldn't be 1 or 0. Yeah, and thinking about such an impact that is quantifiable, yeah, and it's not an output, but it's an impact, that is also always very hard. And it normally takes a team up to 2 or 3 cycles of writing and applying OKRs, so that they're really able to formulate decent OKRs, yeah? And the key results especially. Objectives, I think that's easy, yeah, but making it measurable is a critical and not so easy thing. And what I see always when I'm working with a client, yeah, they say, oh yeah, it's easy to write something with a number, yeah, but it's not that easy, because normally, yeah, you're not thinking about it in that clear description of how you are going to achieve one overarching objective, yeah, with clear, measurable key results. So let's go to the example. Next one, Thomas, please. So how could you remember setting up the base camp and set the foundation for a summit success was the objective? Yeah, and now how do we measure that the base camp is set up properly? Yeah, so that we can ensure summit success. Yeah, the first key result could be, and it's just an example, we have set up 5 tents safely. Yeah, then you measure, are the 5 tents set up? Yeah, but it's not only set up the 5, yeah, but you also need to prove that they are set up safely, right? Because that makes a whole lot of difference. If you're not setting them up safely, yeah, and you look at this safety word, yeah, then it might be too close to an area where might be an avalanche coming down, yeah, and then you don't have achieved that. So someone needs to look at the safety. The second key result could be, we have set up all food supplies, yeah, and that's easy to measure. You know, okay, we need about this amount of kilos, and then you know, okay, we have to carry up 250 kilos in this example, yeah. So that gives you an idea. Okay, 250 kilos, that's a lot. We cannot do that in one way. We have to think about how to organize that and then bring that up the hill and store it safely then on the base camp. Next one. So, and here is also a very good example, yeah, is, yeah, sure, we have participants, and in this example are 20 participants, and we want to do all of that. So setting up the tents and carrying up all the 250 kilos, and everyone is healthy, yeah. So you would never do in a management by objective such a measurable result, yeah, because you say, okay, we want to stay healthy, so we have to take care of us, that nobody is falling into a crevasse or is getting sick because he pushed too hard, and we all are responsible, yeah, that everyone is healthy after we have achieved the objective, yeah. So, and therefore you see, you can put in a lot of information into a good key result, yeah, and if we measure all of them, you say, okay, probably, yeah, we have set up the base camp properly, and now we can go to the next step and build camp number 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And in the end, we will have the success of reaching the summit. Yeah, and this is exactly what you try to do with the objectives and the key results. And it's not only by doing that, so to say, top down, but you also ask your people. And this is really also important, yeah, so that you're not cascading it down, yeah, but you form teams and you have team-based workshops for each of the of the cycles. Yeah, and normally you have this 3 months a cycle of working with an OKR. Yeah, and then you also ask the teams. They are creating their objectives and key results, and it's also very, very important that a single person is accountable for a key result. Yeah, so the objective is the team effort, and it might be the team lead who is responsible for achieving the objective, but it's even more important that you have single persons accountable for one key result, because then you can ask someone where we are. Are you confident that we are able to achieve the key result, yeah, in the time we have planned? Yeah, and then everyone can report, and if you do that in this weekly cycle, yeah, and then you know where you stand. Yeah, so by the number and the confidence level where you're working towards to. Yeah? Good. Next one. So, and how to bring that now all together. Yeah, so we have heard about LUCID, Jungle, and the OKRs. Yeah, and what I think is really the magic is especially when it comes to how to combine long-term goals and short-term action. Yeah, and when you look at many organizations, especially the more mature they are, yeah, you see a lot of short-term action, yeah, but without long-term thinking, yeah, and by far no long-time idea of where you're heading to. But you need that to steer the whole complexity and to be agile in your doing, yeah, because you need to know where you're heading to, yeah, if it's the mountaintop or any other specific really North Star you're heading towards to, yeah. And when you know what a vision is and a mission and value, and you can bring them down. So vision is normally the long-termist thinking, yeah, which is 10 years, and the mission is something you are really trying to accomplish, yeah, and the values are timeless. And this is exactly what you derive from your lucid exercise, yeah, because you have a common understanding, and then you can derive and formulate a vision statement, yeah, and the same for the mission, so what you're really working towards to, and the values, yeah. And then you take the framework of Jungle, yeah, and with Jungle you are able to derive your strategy, so your guiding principles in which you are acting as a firm and communicating how you're going to achieve and reach the summit. Yeah. So for example, it could be your strategy to say, okay, we use all kinds of tools that are available, technical tools, to reach the summit. For example, a helicopter. Yeah. And because we know helicopter, we have enough money, and we are not so keen to walking up all the hill. Yeah. And then the guiding principle is use technology. Yeah. And then you can go up the hill. So, but the most important question is, from my perspective, is how do you operationalize that? Yeah. So which helicopter you use, for example, yeah, because you can go up the hill and then you're realizing, oh, this helicopter has a maximum height of 6,000 meters, and we want to go to 8,800. Yeah. So we have operationalized not the right thing then. Yeah. And therefore the OKRs work, and you can apply them in two ways. Yeah, the one thing is to say, okay, we are defining OKRs that are more like a midterm. Yeah, so let's say 2 years, yeah, up to 2 years, and you formulate what we want to achieve and how to measure the success in the next 2 years. Yeah, and those are the really important ones. Are the short term, yeah, where you do that really in cycles of 3 months. Yeah, so you can walk towards the midterm and then define every quarter the new cycle of your OKRs, and this is where you really operationalize it. Next one, Thomas, with your tactics. Yeah, so these are the coherent actions you do. Yeah, and then that could be a project management tool you work. You can integrate it with Scrum, and or you just use a to-do list, and you have a milestone plan, etc. And the OKRs give you the guidance how to prioritize, yeah, your work. And then you derive the actions and the to-dos, yeah, from what you want to achieve that is formulated in your OKRs. And then you're in the cycle, and you always part of the OKR cycle is not is the definition workshop. So where you set the OKRs, then you have your weekly check-in where you give a quick update of your OKRs, where you are right now, your learnings and your impediments, a little bit like Scrum, yeah, but more focusing on the OKRs. And then you have in the end, you have a retrospective workshop like in Scrum, where you reflect on where your OKRs are set properly, what you have learned, what you want to keep, what you want to do better. And then you start over with the next round of OKR definitions. Yeah, and then it's really agile. And that might also cause, for example, that you say, oh, we need to adjust the strategy. Yeah, because we have learned something that we haven't known. Yeah, and maybe you go through another jungle cycle and you do the measurement that Thomas has shown you, and then you adjust your strategy because you know a little bit more about the complexity. Yeah, and then you carry on. Yeah, and so this is how it really all matches and merges together. Yeah, and you get things done. Good. So that was about OKRs and the ones that went to the website of OKR-canvas.com. Yeah, I have seen that I've created a canvas that helps you to guide through the steps of creating OKRs. Yeah, and there are other templates I use, and normally I work now really in Mural or Miro, yeah, to set the OKRs and work with the team, because you can all focus and manage the OKRs like it really matches to your needs. Yeah, and there are tools out there, yeah, for working with OKRs, and they are fine. But my experience is it's good to know how you want to use OKRs before you use a tool that tells you how to use OKRs. Yeah, because OKRs is also kind of not fuzzy, yeah, but you have some kind of differences, and it has to match to your culture, and therefore it's helpful to learn OKRs with the methodology first, and then you can, for example, think about what tool matches your needs, and then you can work with a tool, or it's just a canvas you're working with. Good. So any questions to OKRs and but also to Jungle and Lucid, if something comes to your mind? And yeah, we have 40 minutes left, so a lot of time for questions. Gustav.
Thank you for introducing these all three methods. Super excited about them. I have 3 questions speaking about OKRs. How do you work with teams to set ambitious goals instead of goals that you know that they can achieve? And the second one is, how have you implemented OKRs with ambitious goals without having the management to treat them like a goal failure if they don't met these ambitious goals?
Yeah.
And the third one, or should I start?
Yeah, so let's start, because those two belong nicely together. So, and I think that this is something you have to be careful about. Yeah, so because it's nice to be super ambitious and formulate, like John Doerr would say, this hairy, audacious goals. Yeah, like the Americans do all the time. Yeah, which is nice and okay. Yeah, and but you should also have the feasibility. Yeah, and the ability of really achieving that in mind. Yeah, and I always refer to, when you think about sports, yeah, whether you're running a marathon or you are a high jumper or any other sports, you imagine something that is ambitious, and you maybe have some doubts if you really are able to achieve that. But you know, if you train well, yeah, and you prepare well and you do what's necessary, there's a potential that you can achieve that. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too ambitious, yeah, where you know right from the start, oh, I'm never going to make it, yeah, or there's a high probability that I'm not going to make it. So I think, because that could also frustrate a team, yeah, and it's becoming even more important, yeah, if you're working in an organization with scarce resources, because it's nice to set some ambitious goals, but you also need resources, yeah, you need human resources to achieve that. Yeah, and the human resources needs time and capabilities and budget and so on and so forth. Yeah, and it has to be realistic from that factors as well. And if you now introduce it to a team, yeah, so I would always ask the question, and that's why, for example, one of the matrices I use is feasibility, yeah, and so to say, and ambition, yeah, and because you always want to do things that are feasible and have a high ambition, or you can say in high impact. You don't want to do the stuff that is not feasible, that would probably have a high impact, yeah, because there's a high probability that you're never going to achieve them, yeah, and that's why you want to have high impact, but also high feasibility, that it's doable. Does that answer your question, Gustav?
I'd like to add one dimension. If you have experience with agile software development teams, you know that they do two things to that to solve exactly that problem. One is they mutually correct during the Scrum meeting about the assessment of the complexity. And over the course of a few sprints, you can start measuring the velocity of the team. But that's relative, and the velocity being measured as breakdown in complexity over time. And that is all relative to the specific configuration, meaning the group of people working together, the technology you're using, the problem you're solving, all of that, right? So what is that to say is you have to learn. And you have to put mutual correction through dialogue in place, but also you have to accept that there's a period of learning.
Thank you. I think it was very good, Sebastian. And I think that your example was very good. Have you worked anything, both of you, with working with OKRs in operations that have both innovative and agile parts, and teams and operations that are not that agile? Because we work in an innovation hub when we have usually basically healthcare, which is quite, the flow is the same repetition all the time. They don't have almost any innovation, and we have other parts that are test areas that are super innovative and are working with an agile method. So there's a bit of different workflows and project styles.
Yeah. So I've set up several innovation hubs, yeah, and worked in that environment. And my experience is that OKRs could solve this divergence between those two different objectives, yeah, being very operational and follows processes, and having the innovative chapter that are doing all the crazy stuff and going into complexity, uncertainty, and dealing with that all the time. Yeah, and so how is that? So first of all, the team or the part of the organization that is working in the innovation space, yeah, many of the innovation organizations have the problem that they cannot articulate how success looks like, yeah, and they cannot articulate it in a way that someone else from another department is not only understanding it, but is maybe motivated to become somehow part of that, yeah, and knows how to contribute. Because if you have formulated the key results, then, for example, someone out of the more process-driven department knows, oh, I can help you with that. If that is your key result, I can help you with that, yeah, because you have formulated how a key result, an outcome looks like. So, and that enables you to form cross-functional teams, yeah, bringing in people out of the more process-oriented culture, yeah, and part of the company, and they learn how to contribute to that. And on the other way around, yeah, the more innovation teams also might know understand better, where the more process-oriented teams have maybe their objectives and key results towards process innovation. Yeah, because this is more on efficiency and the others are more on effectiveness. Yeah, but they now start understanding, okay, if your OKRs towards efficiency, yeah, in the more process-oriented department is looking like that, hey, we are the creators, we have an idea how to help you. Yeah, and then you're creating an interface between the both, so that they don't say maybe not longer anymore, oh, we in the process-oriented department, we earn the money that you burn. Yeah, and that helps that both are able to communicate better with each other. Yeah, and maybe one last exception. Yeah, for example, when you don't formulate a process improvement as OKRs and you're only accepting, okay, we are doing everything the same all the time and we are not about to change it. Yeah, then honestly, you can say maybe it's not so helpful that you work with OKRs. Yeah, because you have not the objective to improve anything. Yeah, and you're not dealing with uncertainty because the process is defined and it stays like that. Yeah, and then OKRs doesn't make so much sense to have the cycles and so on and so forth. Yeah, but honestly, yeah, so even in a procurement department, they can improve. Yeah, yeah, and they should have this ambition. Yeah, and if you bring that then together, it will work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. More questions? Maybe from you, Matt. We haven't heard from you yet.
I'm here and listening. Thank you very much for hosting and sharing all this knowledge. I was interested in learning more about operationalizing objectives and key results. It's a new concept to my company, and I'm a individual coach to business leaders, and they're grasping with just how to be more effective.
Yeah.
And I think where I'm at is understanding that our current corporate culture, it's a 100-year-old company, but it's not, our vision is not specific enough to I think really help me make good practical objectives and key results at my level. I think that's where I'm struggling with this.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, in many organizations that I enter and talk to people, this is not clear enough. Yeah, and so how anybody in an organization could actually make a coherent contribution to what, right? So and then maybe the management says, yeah, but we have our annual targets, yeah, to improve our bottom line, or to enter a new market or whatsoever. Yeah, and then you say, okay, those are KPIs, you operate with it. Yeah, it's operational margin and bottom line and return on investment and so on and so forth, or customer satisfaction. Yeah, and those what you measure all the time. Yeah, but in towards what is the first question, and why? What's the purpose? And then they say, okay, yeah, our strategy is to grow annually 20% for the next 3 years. But honestly, that's not a strategy. Yeah, so this is somehow a KPI-driven line in the sand, yeah, where you want to get there. And the OKRs then should be the objectives that have a positive impact to get to those lines in the sand on the KPI side. Yeah, because you have to do something to grow annually by 20%. Yeah, and the goal is not 20%. Yeah, because this tells us nothing. Yeah, but we have to go to the level where we ask ourselves, okay, what we need to do and to achieve as an outcome to get there. Yeah, and this is where OKRs normally help, that you're formulating those objectives and you formulate how to measure if you have achieved that objective. For example, to become a customer-centric company. Yeah. And so how do you measure that you are a customer-centric company? And if you're a customer-centric company, then probably you will learn more from your customers how to improve, right? And so, but first you have to become a customer-centric company. And if you have to achieve that objective, then you can go the next step. And then it will have probably an impact on your growth trajectory. And if you're making the 20%. Does that make sense, Matt?
It does, yeah. Yeah, I think we need a lot more color in our plans.
Yeah.
Well, if you you can create better objectives and better the descriptions of outcomes, the more colorful your plan is. And my favorite version of a really colorful plan is, I know this name is overused and we all cannot hear him anymore, but what Elon wrote down is his first version of his master plan for Tesla. That nobody ever read that really, hardly anybody. But effectively, he was telling everybody, okay, we're building this overpriced sports car just for tactics, because that gives us the platform to build the infrastructure we need to build an energy company. Right? Now, your whole outcome definition changes 100%, 360 degrees based on that master plan. And this is something, so in other words, if you have something like a master plan, a large horizon, then it becomes a lot easier to describe the outcomes on the operational level.
So what always is a good exercise to go through your firm and ask the people, so what is our reason of existence? Yeah. And what is the strategy of the company? Yeah. Do that exercise. And then you will learn how probably manifold or not existent the answer to those questions are. And if that is not clear, you should start with kind of the lucid and the jungle, yeah, and create this understanding, and then think about how to communicate, because honestly, people like and wish to contribute in an effective way to the success of the company, yeah, and then they do it themselves, yeah. But the problem is they cannot do it if they have no clue where you're going to, yeah, and what is your master plan, and how you're going to execute your master plan, in which guardrails, so your strategy, and so how they should break down, yeah, to on a daily basis their to-dos, and which are the to-dos that contribute to achieve your OKRs. It's not possible. And how do you cope with that impossibility? Yeah, you do micromanagement. Yeah, you have some managers that tell the people what to do. Yeah, and because they don't know it. Yeah, but the problem is, if you have a large organization, maybe even the managers don't know what a coherent action looks like. Yeah, and then you get complete confusion. Yeah, and you have exactly the problem that you have all the power vectors that you have hired into your company, yeah, and they cost you a hell lot of money, yeah, pointing towards all different missions, yeah, or objectives, yeah, and this is not going to work. Ralf or Gustav, you're first.
It was just a quick question. How long does it usually take to implement a LUCID to OKR strategy from the top to the bottom? What's the time period, you would say, from your experience?
Well, as I noted before, you can weave LUCID in very gently. And that would be somewhere along the lines of 6 to 8 weeks and a footprint of about 4 hours per week per participant. A jungle is one short, like 2-day exercise to ramp the team up that works with whatever complex system they want to work with. And after that, it becomes routine very quickly because they've set up the system. Now it's the job of evaluating it at certain intervals so that you can see the change of your system. And then finally, the OKRs. Well, yeah.
The OKRs is normally also the good message is, yeah, you start right away by implementing the OKRs. Yeah, normally you have 1 day of onboarding workshop, yeah, where you get used to the method. You're formulating OKRs that have nothing to do with the firm, yeah, and that you get trained, okay, how to formulate a good objective, how to formulate a key result, how does the process work, etc., etc. So you're getting familiar with the methodology, and then you do the kickoff, and you're creating your first set of OKRs. Yeah, and you normally try to keep them simple, that you maybe as a team, you're not formulating 5 objectives and 5 to 7 corresponding key results. Yeah, because that's a lot. But normally I say one team formulate 1 objective, yeah, and 3 to 5 key results. Yeah, and then you start running. Yeah, because it's then focused, and focus is always good. Yeah, and then you go into the weekly routine. And then you will recognize, oh, maybe we haven't formulated that perfect, and then I say, okay, make you note. We are going to have the retrospective, yeah, where we are going to reflect. And after 3 months, yeah, you are going to increase the level of complexity because you add maybe a couple more objectives and you get more familiar with that, and then you run again. Yeah, and normally after 2 to 3 cycles, which are already bringing you a benefit. Yes, you have to invest some time because such a workshop normally is 4 to 6 hours, depending on the size of the team and so on, to set this first set of OKRs, but you're getting more efficient. And if everyone knows how to prepare for the next round of OKRs, you can also do that in 3 hours. Yeah, and also the retrospective normally is 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, and depending on the size of the organization, you have to do, for example, the leadership OKRs first, because then those are the foundations for the teams underneath the management, for example. Yeah, then it's getting a little bit more complex. Yeah, and the larger the organization is, the more planning you have to do and think about how to that everything fits well together. Then also when it comes to the retro and the review is really looking at the numbers. Yeah, and then learning together also in the management level. Yeah, but so that's getting them more complex, but I think that's absolutely normal. Yeah, and then you have a couple of cycles, and normally after 3 cycles you really get used to it, or if you're not really behind it, it might die. Yeah, and then you are frustrated and you start over normally, then I don't know, 9 months later. Yeah, and they say now we do it properly. Yeah, and then it could work.
Thank you.
Ralph, you have another question, maybe.
No, not really. Not another question, but just to also totally agree with what you said just now. I think OKRs, I mean, probably all 3 methods, I don't know the other 2 so well, but OKRs I do know quite well. They seem very simple. You can sort of explain them in 15 minutes and that's it. And I think the hard part is actually getting it to work in the context that it's meant to work at. And there's a whole bunch of things that will come up. And I guess the nice thing about the methods is that they're iterative and learning. So the kind of the process of doing it is what makes it better. It's also the challenge, and you kind of touched on that just now as well, is it's not losing the focus, because I mean, it's almost guaranteed not to work the way you want to in the first cycle. I guess there are organizations out there that would say, okay, well, it didn't work, we're just going to stop and do something else. But finding the energy and the sort of the champion in the company as well to keep that sort of process alive and say, it's okay. This time wasn't perfect, but that wasn't what we were aiming for anyway. We carry on and we get better and better and learn.
But it's built in the system, right? That's what the retro
Right.
is there for. So you can learn and adjust. That's, for example, what's missing in a framework like Holacracy, because Holacracy doesn't learn about itself, and it requires a very high level of bureaucracy, and so unless you take agency yourself to create this kind of retro iteration inside of Holacracy, you will, unless you have a really the sweet spot of complexity in your organization and size of organization that fits Holacracy perfectly, you'll run into trouble of one kind. So I think with those tools, the iterative nature and the retro nature of both of them is super helpful with exactly that problem. Yeah.
Good.
Wonderful. So we hope some of this can be of help. This is why we do this. We will send the video and the links and missing broken PDF downloads in an email in the next days, so that you can get to work and experiment with those tools. So we're happy if they are of any support, and we've spent time and love and effort to make them happen, or to develop them, like with the OKRs case. Sebastian put a lot of time and love and effort into making OKRs really usable, much more usable than if you hear them or read some book, but have a hands-on way to dealing with them. So we really hope that this is of benefit, because there's so much we have to do, and the better and the faster and the more productive we can get at doing that, the better. Okay.
Thanks to the two of you for the time as well.
It's our pleasure.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, amazing that you put together this webinar. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, and hope to see you soon in some other setting maybe, and just reach out if you have any more questions.
Super. Have a great evening. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Have a good time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.